Remember, if you enjoyed this video, do me a favor and hit that like button. Think about getting in the comments section below and letting me know if you really enjoy what you see. Make sure you Hulk smash that subscribe button. If you feel like you're in a position to support the channel and help it grow, think about using the link in the description to sign up for my Patreon page, sign up for membership right here on YouTube, or pick up your very own JerkComic shirts like the ones you see on the screen. But now, let's get into it. Welcome back, boils and ghouls. So I don't do a lot of like single issue flip throughs, but this book is kind of like, I don't know if I would call it a sleeper. I know cartoonist Kayfabe did a episode on this like several years ago. There's a couple other videos, but I just like, everybody loves Art Adams, but I never hear anybody talk about Web of Spider-Man Annual 2. This comic is like extraordinarily important to me. I got it like way early on in my life. Everything about this book is just jam-packed bad ass from the start. Like, I mean, you can see starting off, we've got a Charles Vest cover. Vest did covers for a bunch of the Web of Spider-Man stuff that's most well remembered. He's got the hanging poster that was just amazing. And that issue 1 cover is like gone on to become super iconic. But this is like, Vest was really known for taking Spider-Man out of the city. So it's cool to see him doing paintings of Spider-Man in the city. But the really cool thing about this book is that basically what it is a way to let Arthur Adams go completely bananas on the art. One of the big things that I think a lot of people dislike or throw at this original comic book and the way that it's printed is the flexographic printing. And Marvel was going through a big change with the way that they were printing comic books. Sometimes it was really apparent. Other times it was kind of not so apparent. With Arthur Adams' art, though, the way that the colors overlay all of these lines and they make this really erratic reproduction for the art, a lot of people hate it. A lot of people trash talk on it. It ruined a lot of books. I grew up on this. So when I talk about like crappy printed newsprint, like these really weird bleeding blocky colors that I really fell in love with, this is what I am talking about. And this issue is a wonderful example. Like, you've got Arthur Adams and he's doing all of his Arthur Adams tropes on the first page. You've got Frankenstein and you've got, like he's watching all of these different television shows. You're going to see a ton of pop culture stuff pop up throughout this issue. Plan 9 from Outer Space is right here on this front cover or on this splash page. But like, as we move into it, you can see how the yellows, and the blues are the worst, which is like super, super apparent because obviously this is a black suit Spider-Man issue. So we're going to see a lot of blocky blue colors, like just kind of thrown over the top of Arthur Adams' really intricate original art. The interesting thing about all of that for me is because this is a New Mutants and Spider-Man centric crossover issue. Warlock is the main character. Warlock was obviously created by Bill Sienkiewicz, and Sienkiewicz has that like erratic line quality and just very scratchy. Adams is very rounded, and he does have a lot of the same tendencies to add a bunch of details early on in his career, especially at this point. But that was much more apparent when somebody like Terry Austen was inking him. And what's interesting here is that Arthur Adams is inking himself, and really you end up with a very Bill Sienkiewicz looking Warlock and all these little characters, all of the scratchy colors. And this is another one where you can see where the color overlays on his line work. I mean, they basically make stuff almost unreadable. It's terrible. And this is not like a mint condition book. This is what, a well-read copy of this book looks like after, because this came out in '86, and I may or may not have gotten this when it came out. So this is what an old book looks like. If you look at Spider-Man, I mean, these blue overlays, they are so hard to read that you can hardly tell where his hands are from a distance once your color on your page like starts fading at all, which happened like almost instantaneously with these old books. The story for this is like Spider-Man busts in on these animal liberation front people who are rescuing these animals that are being experimented on in New York by these like stupid scientists. And it's Ando Cinti. It's a little bit preachy. It's not a bad story, certainly not a great story. But it's more, it feels like more of like just an excuse to let Arthur Adams to draw whatever the hell he wants as we turn the page and we get Warlock as David Letterman. And like, you can tell if you look at the original art, most of which, the original art for most of this is available to look at online. And if you look at the original art, the likeness on this is dead on. But if you're looking at this printed, it's really scratchy and feels kind of rough, which is really interesting again, because this isn't Terry Austen inking Arthur Adams. It's Arthur Adams inking Arthur Adams. I've heard some stipulation that Mike Mignola might have been responsible for some of the inks in this as art came up on really hard deadline stuff. I'm not sure I buy that. I think it was more art just dialing back his stuff and him and Mike having a lot more in common. What's cool is Mike does have a backup story in this. Art and Mike really, they've had a long relationship. I believe they even went to art school together. But, in the early Hellboy, you had the Hellboy story with a backup by Art Adams. And here we have an Art Adams story with a backup by Mike Mignola. I've heard some stipulation these are also Marvel characters, Toy, and I can't remember who else, but I've never heard any official word on the fact that that is them as like a little head nod, but that seems like something Art Adams definitely would have done, especially at this time. You got like Robbie the Robot. I mean, every page of this book is just jam-packed with not only amazing art, but some really cool pop culture references. Also, because this is Arthur Adams, you are just given a cornucopia of visual, like, deliciousness. And one of the coolest panels in this entire book for me is this room. Because it's two scientists that live in this room, and one half is super dirty and one half is super clean. And it's like, totally symmetrical. Adams is like a master of perspective, and this issue is a wonderful example of showing you him playing with perspective even this early on in his career, just because of some of the amazing shots that you get with all of these team books. And you got a lot of that stuff on the X-Men annuals that he worked on that people know a lot more about. But it's interesting to see them here, in my opinion, because Adams is inking them, which isn't always the case. And then, as I've said, some people say some of this more sparse inking looks like Mignola, and we'll see why they say that in the back of this, because this doesn't look like the typical Mignola that probably most of you younger viewers are going to be thinking of. This is more the comic buyer's guide. I don't buy it. I still think it's just Art Adams. This is like pure, beautiful, unadulterated, pre-image Spider-Man for me too. Like, if you look at this issue, you can see why Arthur Adams was so influential to everybody. Like Todd McFarlane, especially, that would come along and really play with stuff. He didn't necessarily have all of the spaghetti webbing, but the contortion and the skinny Spider-Man and making him kind of malleable and doing whatever you want from panel to panel, that is totally 100%, in my opinion. Well, no, Michael Golden does deserve some good credit for elements that they brought in on Spider-Man as well, but a lot of that is Art Adams. As I said, this issue obviously is basically just written, I think, as an excuse to let Art Adams go crazy and draw whatever he wants. We've got Godzilla. A lot of people have said that, like, in this, he looks like scrambled eggs, and they kind of like, they are pointing at this at the point where Art Adams is fighting against the deadlines. And so you're seeing a little bit chintzier inks and stuff. A lot of that is the reproduction of this art. Go look at the original art, much more detailed, a lot more line weight, much more refined, does not look nearly this rough. These are the few panels, like you can see these really heavy spot blacks that don't necessarily feel very Art Adams. This is why I don't say I 100% discount Mike Mignola working on this issue, is panels like that. But they're few and far between, and I really feel like probably most likely this is just Art Adams coming up on a deadline. Seeing Art Adams draw stuff like Godzilla, and we get King Kong here in just a second. Yeah, here we go, King Kong. It's always a treat. I do love, because you can see how he's like kind of turning into the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man with the legs and stuff here. It's a transformation shot, but a lot of that, in my opinion, feels like Art Adams being like, deadline time. A lot of big pages. The backgrounds start getting like super sparse. The good thing about that is, though, is that a bunch of the colors from the backgrounds are not like bleeding over and destroying line work and stuff. And man, still, this art is absolutely jaw-dropping. If you've never picked up this issue and just flipped through it for yourself, I cannot recommend it enough. It's not an expensive issue. It's super easy to find. Amazing freaking book. I mean, just everything from the cartooning in this book, which is just stellar, to shots like this where you're really getting those typical Adams faces that would emerge over the next few years through X-Men and stuff. And Terry Austen is a big part of refining these beautiful shots of faces and emotions that Art Adams was able to deliver. But you get that all in one place. It's a little bit unpolished. The printing, in my opinion, the printing adds to it. It's kind of like watching a VHS, old schlocky VHS movie. This was made not for this printing, but this is how I remember it. I know you can get black and white versions of this in some of the Epic collections, at least one of the Epic collections. So I do recommend checking out the line art, and you can look at scans of the original art if you want to look them up one by one. But if you want to own them, they do have them in the Epic collections. It's amazing stuff. Everything about this comic is just fun and engaging, and it flies by. I totally forgot to point out earlier, there are a ton of like really cool little references and stuff. But one thing that I don't ever hear anybody bring up is at the toy store that they're at. That right there is apparently Ann Nocenti. I thought that was really, really funny, the writer of the book, and, the editor for a lot of the Claremont X-Men and stuff. And she would come back in the 90s and do a lot of work as well. But I thought that was really funny. I don't hear anybody point out that is a very clear picture of Nocenti by Adams thrown in there. Wonderful new universe add there. This Mignola piece, you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. And if you're looking for Hellboy Mignola, I don't know if this is necessarily going to scratch that itch for you. It's a much more typical Ann Nocenti story. It's like real dreamy, but that plays well into Mignola's proclivities at this point for very sparse backgrounds, really hazy, and it's stuff that he would, refine and move more heavily into with Hellboy, with all of the haze and the smoke and silhouettes and stuff. And he's really just starting to lean into that stuff. His spot blacks are getting way stronger. But this is the Mignola that I remember from Comic Buyer's Guide, doing all those ads and like a lot of promotional art, not necessarily for Marvel, but for, guys who were doing shows and cons and that kind of thing. This is the Mignola that I remember first popping up. I love this story. I actually have a tattoo of this Hobgoblin panel on my leg. This story is beautifully laid out as well. If you read it, it's very short, but it packs this massive punch. And some of these panels, especially considering how sparse these layouts are, there's like no backgrounds in most of this stuff. You got pure black with just a window silhouette. You're starting to see the genius of Mike Mignola kind of really peek through, but you're still getting these really interesting kind of Eisner, Wrightson, Frazetta, rounded, bubbly faces and shapes. I still love that era of Mignola. It's obviously not, I mean, I don't even want to say the best. I just don't necessarily know if it's my favorite, but damned if it is not fun to look at. I mean, it is some high level stuff. You can see little stuff where, like, I think that a year, 2 years later, Peter Parker's face here would have been much stronger, but he really does nail some of these expressions and stuff beautifully. I mean, and that's saying something considering it's in an issue with Arthur Adams, who I see as he was wonderful at headshots. He could always make those headshots, the floating heads, interesting. And that's not something that everybody can do. But Mignola has got some great ones. I love his expressions on Hobgoblin in this. The story is fun as well. Like it's it's about the lies in Peter Parker's life and the lie that he has to live to be Spider-Man and how hard that is. I also really love this last panel here of Spider-Man. It's a little bit rough. It's a little bit weird, but I think that's kind of what I like about it, is you can see Mignola just starting to be like, yeah, let's go there. And that's kind of the entire theme of this entire issue. When you read through it, is kind of like, let's just go there. Let's just do it. Let's try something. I recommend picking this up as a single issue to look at the flexographic printing and then to look at the original art. And if you can, pick up the refined, I think they're taken from photo stats for the Epic collections, but it's just the black and white line art with no color. They're very different experiences. They offer very different looks on Art Adams at this point in his career, especially considering this is, inked by Art Adams, which again is not something that you always saw. And it's not something that I think people necessarily associate directly with him. I think a lot of people think of that classic Art Adams style as the Art Adams Terry Austen. Same with John Byrne. And this issue is a really cool way to kind of step outside of that and see how people in this period, when he was really breaking in and doing more sparse work and stuff, that everybody was just so excited to see and waiting for. This is what got us so excited. This is what drove people into the shops. Like, I know that the Web of Spider-Man 2 is one of the, more unknown, less talked about annuals. It's not the X-Men annuals. It doesn't have the X-Babies. It's not his Excalibur work, but this is the beginning of all of that. It's a really cool issue, super cheap, some amazing illustrations, fun story, a little bit preachy, but it's fun and it flies along. And again, just looking at like the flexographic printing and the overlay of how hideous this really is in retrospect, but how much I still love it in spite or maybe because of that, is really interesting as well. It's not just Art Adams either. As I said, it is really neat that at the end here, you get that like inverse and you get this really cool Mike Mignola piece. I highly recommend checking this out. I don't want to do a ton of single issue flip throughs, but this issue was monumentally important to me as a kid. Growing up, it's still influential to me. This is my original copy, which is why it's just all chewed to shit. I'm surprised it's not taped on. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed this, let me know. I'll do some stuff like this. I don't want to make it a huge part of the channel. I don't want to overshadow the docs, but I just think these are fun flip throughs and a cool way to maybe expose you guys to single issues or information about those issues that you might not know about. And that's kind of the point of the channel. So let me know what you think. get in the comments section, and thank you as always for sticking with me.
If you did enjoy what you saw, make sure you hit that like button. Think about getting in the comment section below and letting me know if you really enjoyed what you saw. Make sure you Hulk smash that subscribe button. If you do that, make sure you ding the little notification bell so you never miss another video or premiere. Again, if you feel like you're in a position to help the channel grow, think about using the link in the description below to sign up for my Patreon page. For as little as $3 a month, you get access to tons of behind the scenes posts, updates, exclusive content like uncut interviews, and you can even get your name in the credits. If you want to support the channel, but Patreon is not your thing, have no fear. You can finally sign up for membership right here on YouTube. Just hit the little join button and make sure to select the tier and the perks that fit you best. If that's not enough, you can also make one-time donations towards specific goals or just tip the channel using the Ko-Fi link in the description below. And you can even pick up your very own JerkComic shirts like the ones you see on the screen now. As always, this video was brought to you by the Jerk Broadcasting Service, as well as generous grants from the Patreon, Ko-Fi, and YouTube members you see on the screen now. I seriously want to thank every single one of you that supports the channel and helps make these videos possible, with a super special thanks to my loyal Wednesday Warriors, Channel 10, Chasen, Clinton Salvini, and Mike Dolan. I really hope the quality and content is getting better, and I can't wait to see where this next year takes us with your continued support. Thank you again for helping this crazy dream of mine become a reality, and for sticking with me. I hope you all enjoyed, maybe even learned something, and as always, I really, truly, and honestly ask only two things. Keep it in those local shops, and keep reading comics.